Why traffic lights use red, yellow and green. The secret reason why. Before traffic lights ever told cars when to move, they were trying to control horses. Before they hung above crowded intersections on metal poles, they flickered as gas lamps outside one of the most powerful buildings on Earth. And before green became the universal signal for go, it meant something closer to careful now. The colours that silently control every road today were not picked because they looked neat, balanced, or easy on the eyes. They came from railroads, accidents, explosions, confusion, and a very urgent need to make fast-moving machines follow a language that every person could understand in a single glance. The story begins in London in December of 1868, just outside the Houses of Parliament. The streets around Westminster were packed with horse-drawn carriages, delivery carts, pedestrians, and politicians hurrying across the road to cast their votes. There were no automobiles filling the streets yet, no engines growling at red lights, no taxis waiting impatiently at corners, but the problem was already there. Too many people, too many wheels, too much movement, and no clear rhythm to hold it all together. The man who stepped forward with an answer was John Peake Knight, a railway engineer who understood movement better than most. Railways had already learned a dangerous lesson. When heavy machines move quickly, waving arms and shouted warnings are not enough. Trains needed signals that could be seen from far away, recognized instantly, and obeyed without hesitation. Knight looked at the chaos of London's streets and brought railway thinking into the city. His invention looked almost nothing like the traffic lights seen today. It was a tall semaphore signal, more like something from a railway line than a modern intersection. It had arms that moved up and down, and a police officer had to operate it by hand. During daylight, those arms told carriage drivers when to stop and when to move with caution. At night, when the fog settled in and the city glowed under gaslight, a lantern took over. It burned red and green. Red meant stop. Green meant caution. For a short, strange moment, London seemed to have invented the future. Then, just a few weeks later, that future exploded. A gas leak caused the signal to blow up, injuring the policeman who was operating it. The world's first traffic light disappeared almost as quickly as it had arrived. What had seemed like a clever solution suddenly looked dangerous, awkward, and maybe even too far ahead of its time. For decades, the idea faded into the background, but the problem it tried to solve never went away. It only grew larger, louder, and harder to ignore. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, cities began changing in ways people could feel every morning on the street. Horses still pulled carts through crowded roads, but now bicycles slipped between them. Streetcars rang their bells as they rolled along fixed tracks. Automobiles, still new and unpredictable, began pushing their way into the same narrow spaces. Intersections turned into noisy stages of confusion, filled with wheels, hooves, footsteps, bells, whistles, and nervous glances. A police officer standing in the middle of the street could only do so much. He could raise a hand, wave traffic forward, blow a whistle, or shout over the noise. But that only worked if everyone saw him. It only worked if everyone understood him. And it only worked until the traffic became too fast, too heavy, and too complicated for one person to control. The earliest traffic signals borrowed almost everything from the railway world. Some used mechanical arms, some used signs, some used rotating panels. Others displayed simple words like stop and go. At night, coloured lamps made those instructions visible through darkness, rain, fog, dust, and smoke. But there was no single system. One city might use a signal box, another might build a tower. One intersection might depend on a police officer nearby, while another might use a manually operated device from a booth. The modern road was beginning to appear, but the road's language had not yet settled. The colours themselves carried older meanings before they ever appeared above city streets. Red had long been tied to danger, warning, blood, fire, and command. It was the kind of colour that demanded attention, especially in the dark. For railways, red became the obvious signal for stop because stopping a train was never a gentle suggestion. It was urgent. It could mean the difference between safety and disaster. Green, however, did not always mean go. In early railway signalling, green was often used as a caution signal, while white could mean the track was clear. To modernise, that feels almost backward. But in a world of lamps, lenses, and colored glass, white seemed bright, simple, and easy to recognize. It looked clean. It looked visible. It looked reliable. Then its weakness became impossible to ignore. A broken colored lens could make a dangerous signal appear white. A normal lamp in the distance could be mistaken for permission to continue. A worker's lantern, a house light, or some glow along the track could suddenly look like the all clear. On a railway, that kind of misunderstanding was not a minor mistake. It could send tons of metal forward when it should have stopped. So green slowly changed its meaning. It became the safer, clear signal because it was colored, distinctive, and much harder to confuse with some random white light in the distance. Yellow, once glassmakers could produce a dependable amber color that did not look too much like red or green, became the warning between them. The three-color system was beginning to form long before most city streets were ready to use it. Then came the automobile, and everything changed. By the 1910s and 1920s, cars were no longer strange machines that only a few people stopped to stare at. They were becoming part of everyday city life. They were faster than horses, heavier than bicycles, and far less forgiving when something went wrong. Cities like Cleveland, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, and Detroit suddenly faced a new kind of danger. Traffic was moving too quickly for hand signals alone. A raised arm in the middle of the street was no longer enough. In 1912, Lester Wire, a police officer in Salt Lake City, developed an early electric traffic signal. 2 years later, in 1914, Cleveland installed an electric signal at a busy intersection using red and green lights along with a warning buzzer. These early machines still depended on human control, but electricity changed the possibilities. The signal no longer needed open gas flames. It could shine brighter. It could be safer. It could be placed more easily where drivers needed to see it. Then Detroit became the place where the story took a sharper turn. Detroit in 1920 was not just another American city. It was the beating heart of the automobile age. Cars rolled out of factories, filled the roads, and changed the pace of daily life. Streets that had once moved at the speed of horses were now packed with engines, tires, horns, and drivers trying to make sense of a new urban rhythm. At busy intersections, two-color signals created a dangerous gap. Drivers saw green and moved forward. Then, without warning, the light changed to red. There was no pause, no transition, no moment to prepare. It was permission 1 second and command the next. A Detroit police officer named William Potts recognized the danger. He took the logic of railroad signaling and adapted it to the city street. His answer was a three-color, four-way traffic light: red, yellow, and green. Red stopped traffic. Green released it. Yellow gave drivers the missing message in the middle. The signal is about to change, so prepare to stop. That single extra color changed the feeling of the road. Traffic control was no longer just a blunt command of stop and go. It became a sequence, a rhythm, a warning before the order. A small window of time that allowed drivers to react before the intersection became dangerous. Around the same period, another important figure entered the story: Garrett Morgan, an inventor from Cleveland. After witnessing a crash between an automobile and a horse-drawn carriage, Morgan designed a traffic signal with a third position that stopped traffic in all directions. That brief all-stop moment gave intersections time to clear, protecting drivers, pedestrians, and anyone caught in the middle. His patent helped push forward the idea that intersections needed more than a simple back-and-forth command. They needed protected time. They needed space between movements. By then, the traffic light was no longer just a lamp hanging over a street. It was becoming a machine for organizing motion. The reason today's traffic lights look so familiar is not only because of history, it is also because of human design. Red sits at the top or on the left, where it can be found quickly. Yellow is placed between danger and permission. Green sits at the bottom or on the opposite end, completing a pattern that can be recognized even from a distance. That order matters more than most people notice. Traffic lights have to work in terrible conditions. Drivers see them through rain-covered windshields, through sun glare, fog, snow, dust, tree branches, late-night reflections, and streets crowded with signs, headlights, and movement. Color is important, but position is just as important. Even someone who has trouble telling colors apart can often understand the signal by where the light appears. The shape of the signal also came from practical problems. The lenses, hoods, reflectors, and later LED panels all exist for one reason. The message must be unmistakable. Early incandescent bulbs needed coloured lenses to create the signal. Bright sunlight could strike the glass and create phantom reflections, making a lamp look lit when it was not. Visors were added to shield the lights and make them easier to read. Later, better optics and LED technology made traffic lights brighter, more efficient, and easier to maintain. Standardization turned a local solution into a global language. Different countries developed rules for placement, timing, pedestrian crossings, turning arrows, flashing lights, and lane control. The exact details can change from one place to another, but the heart of the system became almost universal. Red means stop. Yellow means the change is coming. Green means proceed. The hidden truth is that these colours were never just decoration. They are a compressed history of railway danger, city chaos, engineering mistakes, human reaction time, and the long struggle to make movement predictable. There are strange leftovers buried in the story. The first traffic signal appeared before automobiles ruled the road. The first version ran on gas and exploded. Green was not always the colour of movement. White once meant clear, until railway engineers realised that ordinary white light was far too easy to confuse with safety. Yellow did not become the warning colour just because someone liked how it looked. It became useful because technology finally made a reliable amber lens that could sit between red and green without being mistaken for either one. So whenever traffic pauses at an intersection, it is obeying a system older than modern driving itself. The colours above the road are not random, they are survivors. Red came from danger. Green came from the railway's search for a safer, clear signal. Yellow arrived as the missing warning between motion and stop. Together they turned noisy, unpredictable streets into timed movement, one glowing command at a time.